Well, good Wednesday morning, everybody. How we doing out there?
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Give
Morning.
me a thumbs down emoji if you can't stand country. Anybody just can't get down with it? There's gotta be somebody that just can't
I'm
stand this stuff.
trying.
You're trying, Wendy.
Yeah, normally I cannot, but my entire
Haven't you been in Florida for like ever?
I know. I'm the last to go.
Get with the program, Wendy.
Right. I even grew up on horses, so I don't get it the whole thing. I'm more rock and roll, and I like everything actually. Country, some of it, a little bit. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you.
All right, who's got something good to share? Who's got a win to throw it on the table?
I don't have a win, but I have a fun fact. So I love country music, and especially my newest is Morgan Wallen. I love Morgan Wallen. He's amazing. But and I also love Kane Brown. So Wendy, Kane Brown might be one that you would be able to jam to. But fun fact is I love country music so much. I grew up in Florida that I used to be part of the Florida Boot Scooters. So we used to go to this bar when I was like 10. And yep, a bar when you're 10. That's how you know you grew up in Florida. And it was called Scooters, and it was in Venice. And we used to be part of this line dancing group, and we danced at the Florida State Fair every year. And one year, we did a pretty complicated line dance, and I was the only one. I was a 10-year-old on stage shining. I'm the only one that didn't mess it up, and I got standing ovations and flowers. And so that's my fun fact. I am a line dancing star.
I love it. I love it. Great share. Great share. So what do you got for us?
So after there's a closing today, which
Awesome.
It's been, I think, 2.5 months with multiple extensions for various reasons, bank things that needed to be done in the house before for the appraiser. And so what the bad side of this is that the homeowner left a lot of things, furniture, hazardous waste, tires. So we are asking for a credit for the buyer to dispose of all this. So hopefully the attorneys can figure out a figure. I threw a figure out, and the buyer's attorney said, hold on, let's see what the other attorney says. So
I will tell you, it is violently expensive to properly dispose of hazardous materials. I did a clean out of my house probably like a year ago. I brought it to this location in Westfield. It's like the proper way to do it. And I think I spent I must have had, I don't know, let's say 20 containers, just random stuff, basement, garage. I think it cost me like $300 or something crazy. It was crazy. So, individually going about this, if you guys ever get into this situation, and every state's obviously going to be different with their disposal rules, but trying to individually dispose of things at the proper places if you want to be economical about it. Because if you just bring it to like a hazardous waste facility, they just put them in these different bins, and this one's $10 a canister, this one's $30, this one, it was. But I know like paint, a lot of the paint stores will take it back. But maybe you can only bring 5 or 10 at a time. And I think it was like one of these things where, like, if you're in Massachusetts, they don't do it in Mass at Sherwin-Williams, but they do it in Connecticut, or some locations don't do it, but Enfield, Connecticut, Sherwin-Williams took a bunch of paint back. I think I had to do 5 gallons at a time. But yeah, it's crazy to properly dispose of stuff. So anybody else have a disposing of hazardous materials story or comment?
Yeah, I have a comment. So just because last month we did this, the dump in Wilbraham was hosting like this free thing where you bring your hazardous materials and they will dispose of it for free. And I guess the different dumps do that throughout the year. So you could always call the local dump too, even if you get the credit too, maybe just advise your buyers, to call around and see if they have any of these events going on. So they pretty much took all of our oil. They took most of our paint. They wouldn't take certain paints, like they wouldn't take because it had something in it that they couldn't take, so we would have to pay to have that disposed. But we got rid of like 10 gallons of paint and like 4 or 5 things of oil. So might be an option for your buyers too.
You know, the buyers didn't even want a credit, and I'm like, you know, you guys, there's, you know, quite a bit of stuff you're gonna have that's gonna come out of your pocket. You really, you know, and the attorney's gonna talk to him this morning about, you know, accepting a credit, you know, and Jose's just really worried that the property's not gonna close on, you know, because then we're gonna need an extension. So I'm leaving it up to the attorneys to kind of figure this one out and make sure that I get an addendum in for the credit.
I will say something that you mentioned in there, Sue, that I want everybody to be careful of, and that is trying to make something happen on a deal, either without your buyer's knowledge or regardless of what your buyer is saying. This seems like it's fine, but when you guys start to push an issue because you think it's right, man, your buyer shouldn't have to take this house with all this stuff in it, right? And you escalate it. And I'm not saying this is going to happen on this deal, Sue, but it can. And I've seen some weird stuff happen. You escalate it to the point where the seller goes, that's it. I'm not selling you the house. I'm not signing the papers. And you were trying to get your clients $200, $500 without knowing how much they really wanted to push for this. You could really get yourself in trouble. Like a countersuit, you know, could come because they say, you didn't have my best interest in mind. Right? Even though you really did, your heart of hearts, you were trying to do what you thought was right for your client. All of a sudden, the deal falls apart. You know, and I think you see this a lot more with like maybe repair requests or pushing even at offer acceptance. You're trying to get an extra term in there, and all of a sudden, it takes an extra day to negotiate it. Your buyers think they got a deal. A better offer comes in. You know, so sometimes we do got to just take the deal that's on the table, or at least just talk to your buyer. Be like, hey, I don't think this is fair. How hard do you want me to push? Right? And then make sure it's them directing you so that they can never come back to you and say, what the hell were you doing, Sue? We would have taken it as is. Now we're not even going to close. You know? So, Laura, you got your hand up.
I was just wondering, when you went, Sue, was it at the final walkthrough you discovered all the stuff?
Yeah, when we did our walkthrough last night, because they're closing as 9 a.m. this morning. There was a mattress upstairs, which we requested them to take out. You know, dressers, a couch, used oil, all kinds of insect cans, spray cans. You know,
Yeah, just
it's all there.
stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, with the oil, like from like car oil, just an FYI to all folks, because I've had this happen with sellers. I'm like, oh my God, there's all this old oil. You can actually just drive it over to AutoZone and they'll take it, FYI, for free. I've had to do it so many freaking times. I find it in the garage and I'm like, you know, because usually when I have a final walkthrough as a seller's agent, I'll go and scope it prior to the final walkthrough. And I'll be like, all right, we got to get all this shit out of here, you know, because keep in mind, in our contracts, it says broom swept. It's all in there. You know what I mean? The properties to be delivered, broom swept. It's in the contract. So it's not like, you know, like the seller's on the hook. They got to do it unless there was some kind of agreement, an addendum saying that, you know, they're going to leave the pool table. They're going to leave all the shit that the lender can't see. So like it is in the contracts. It's got to go, you know? So another thing I do, because
Oh, I'm losing you.
right now it sounds like you don't have any kind of number to use for a, you know, can you hear me? Sorry, I'm driving now, actually, I'm pretty important. But
Yep, you're good.
But what I do usually when I have it happen too, sometimes I get a feeling, you know what I mean? Like even as a buyer's agent, I'm like, these fuckers are not going to get this shit out. Like I just have a feeling. So I'll try to get there prior to my clients, like a good solid half hour early to scope it. And then I can kind of like call the seller's agent before the panic strikes with the clients there. You know what I'm saying? just get there early if you have a feeling, and just in general, because then you can catch shit. I can call the seller's agent and be like, hey, look, there's a bunch of shit still here. What are we going to do? And then kind of get that ball rolling before the folks get there so that you can kind of prep. So like when they pull up, you know, I'm like, hey, just so you know, we're going to walk in here. There are items left behind. We're working on figuring out what to do to remediate it. So don't worry about it. Like, we're working on it, you know? And then also Paradise, for example, they're like a popular junk removal company. You can text them pictures of the items remaining and they can come up with estimates, because different items cost different amounts to dispose of. Like Steve was saying, it's like if there's a television with a old back on it, the old, you know, tubes, those are more expensive. Mattresses cost a certain amount. Like even with Jared, with that dumpster he has, like he has to gauge what's going in there, because it's going to cost XYZ to dispose of a mattress. So if like Paradise is a popular junk removal company, I use them a lot. And you can literally just shoot a text. I think her name's Lynn. Be like, hey, Lynn, I need junk removal estimate. And then she'll say, okay, send me pictures of all the shit. So you send pictures, and then she'll email you an estimate, and then you can email it to the attorneys. It's going to cost $850 to get all this shit out of here. And usually a good junk removal company can come that day, that same day. They'll send a truck out with like 5 guys. They'll run in, take all the shit and get it out. But you have that estimate. And then the attorney will cut a check to, for example, Paradise for $850 from the seller's proceeds, so that your client isn't going into a house full of shit. I have it happen so much. It's so annoying.
So my buyers, one of them works at a donation center, and they really don't have like a problem, but of getting rid of things, but it's just the stuff that costs money if if it's not going to the donation center. And I did email the attorney and sent them her pictures, and she's emailed the seller's attorney, and they're going to figure it out. The sellers are already out of town.
They don't know a number to do. The attorneys don't know the cost of this shit. That's why I'm saying, if you talk to Paradise, it's just an example of a place. They're local. They're great and fast. Send them pictures, then you can show the attorneys the estimate, and then the attorneys know what to hold back or cut a check to your buyer, or do half and half. They'll come up with some agreement. Look, seller will cover half the cost. They're going to give you $400 as a credit from the proceeds to help remove this shit. You can come to some kind of agreement, but the attorneys aren't going to know a number. That's the problem. So that's why I'm saying, if you text these pictures to a junk removal company, and like I said, Paradise is great. It's literally dice, like you're rolling dice.
Yeah.
They're awesome, and they'll just email you, because the attorneys need a number to go off of. You know what I mean? Like, you can make up numbers. Nobody really knows, but if you have that piece of paper to show them, and then they can both look at it, they show the sellers, look, this is the cost to remove all the shit. Like I said, maybe they might even give half. Maybe they'll give $200. It's just going to be like, somebody's helping your client to get this out. And even if they don't mind, like I said, in the contracts, broom fucking swept, just like Steve's video. I don't know if you guys seen it. I love it.
Thanks, Lori.
Thank you.
Jeff and Linda, you guys had your hand up. Is it on this topic or something else?
It is on this topic.
All right, go ahead.
So we, after, coming into a couple of walkthroughs and facing this very type of scenario, there's not a lot you can do when you're on the buy side, but Jeff and I took a decision that it was really critical that we educate our sellers about what not to do, so that we don't have this kind of scenario at our closings. So once we get through the attorney review period and we're moving towards closing, we talk to our sellers and say, hey, if there are any items that you are thinking that you want to leave in the home, please send us pictures of them, and we're going to send them over to the buyer and ask if they want any of those items to remain in the home. If they do not, please know that everything has to be out. That you can't assume that they're going to want your leftover tiles, paints, your grandmother's dresser. You can't make an assumption, and we don't want to have this situation on the day of closing where we might not make it to closing because the buyers are utterly flummoxed and incensed that you left all of this stuff for them that's nowhere in the contract. While the contract does clearly say that it's going to be, broom clean condition, and that you're going to remove your items from the property. And so by setting that expectation and really walking them through it, we have now created an expectation that they better get that stuff out, or there could be a significant hefty charge to them, a delay in the closing, and we don't want any of that to happen. And it's just an extra layer of professionalism that we bring to the table for our buyers and ultimately, for our sellers and ultimately then for buyers, so that we have smoother transactions. It's just talking to them and setting them up, because they don't know. You would think that it would make sense to them, but it's not enough to say, have the home in broom sweep condition, because they might, but they left all this stuff. So
it's a great share, and I think it's a great share because it's not just for the seller side. I think this is what we should be doing on the buy side, is open up the same dialogue, calling the listing agent, especially if you don't have an experienced agent. And sometimes an experienced agent, it just gets sloppy too, and they forgot to make the phone call. So, hey, our closing's coming up in a week. What I typically do when I'm representing the buyers, I just reach out to the listing agent like I'm doing now. Just, could you ask your sellers if there's anything they were looking to leave behind? Maybe send us some pictures of anything, see if my guys want it. Otherwise, we expect everything to be gone. And now we've opened this dialogue up a week before, and we've got clear expectations for both sides. So I think we can use this on both sides. Great share. So
in previous sales, I've done all that, asking the seller's agent to make sure that everything's gone. But this particular agent is very difficult to get a hold of. I only get a hold of her at 7 o'clock in the morning. And
if you don't have a cooperating party, there's not much you can do. But I do want to make sure here's a difference of phrasing. Calling the listing agent, hey, don't forget, we want it in broom swept condition, right? Making sure everything's gone, like you just said. Or, hey, you know what? Can you reach out to your sellers, see if there's anything that they were looking to leave behind? Just shoot me some photos. Let's just make sure it's okay with my buyers. There's a difference in that phrasing, right? Those words that we're using there of, hey, just make sure everything's gone. And they're thinking, oh, what's the big deal if I leave a couple of things, versus, hey, can you just take some pictures of the stuff that you plan on leaving? So I think just getting your words right there. We spent a lot of time on that, and I did want to make sure I brought something to everybody's attention, because I think it's super important. I'm going to be pushing pretty hard over the next couple of days. Going to be shooting a video for the Roby agents with a bunch of different tips and tricks and strategies for everything going on in our settlement. But I did want to let you know it has come to my attention that our favorite attorney, Mr. Ketchmark, has a $10 million marketing campaign going. So if you don't know who Mr. Ketchmark is, he is the attorney responsible for, the massive lawsuit. I think, in his pocket, you're talking about $200 million out of this settlement. So what he has done is he has launched a marketing campaign to now make sure everybody is complying with the settlement. 5 million of the 10 million, I'm being told, are being spent on secret shoppers. If you are to show a property and say, oh, don't worry about it, we'll just sign it on the next one, you're going to be in some trouble. So please, please, please do not show properties, right? This guy is spending a boatload to try and catch agents doing this. Please do not show a property without a buyer's agreement. You got to sit down, have the conversations, and do it the right way. Jeff and Linda.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Steve. I think we've mentioned before, we're licensed here in Florida and Illinois. We've already had reports of exactly that, secret shoppers, if you will. An agent, competing agent, brought somebody into an open home, and they were questioned by a tester that said, hey, do you have a buyer's agreement? just because it's an open home, they go by themselves. The client goes by themselves. They don't need an agreement. If you accompany them, you are on a showing. You need an agreement. The agent was found not to have one, and don't know what the repercussions are having, but they were called out on it, and it was a broker to broker conversation about, hey, this is going on. So there are people out there. It's already happening.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's definitely going to be happening. So you're going to be getting, all kinds of calls. So make sure if this is somebody that you don't know, you're extra careful. And obviously, just even for the people, just go about it the right way. Hearing some conversation with the people that aren't willing to sign this, if you think about the way that we did our business before, it just seems ludicrous to say, you know what, let's go drive around for 6 months, look at houses, and hopefully I make some money here. Let's sit down, have a conversation. This is how I get paid. Go ahead, Sue.
So I booked a showing time, and I spoke with the agent and I asked her, so is there, a commission being paid by the seller? And she goes, oh yeah, 2%. But if you want more, just let me know. So I'm thinking to myself, isn't it the buyer's at the buyer's request that the agent gets more of a compensation?
Yeah, look, at any point in the past or present, if you weren't happy with the compensation, you could always try and negotiate more, either with your client, with the seller, right? So it's just a conversation with the buyer, right? Just
Okay.
remember, you can't receive more than your buyer's agreement says that you can receive, right? So getting buyer's agreement on the higher side and telling your buyers, hey, if I can't get this, I'm willing to go down to X. Otherwise, you're going to have to do an addendum and alter the buyer's agreements that you have in place. So,
Okay.
KB.
So I can't say, oh, sorry.
So
Go ahead,
that
Sue.
that was oh, go ahead, Sue.
So I can't say to the agent, you're offering 2, but I would like 3. But that, correct?
No, you're not going to. No, you're going to have that conversation with your buyer.
Buyer.
Hey, look,
Okay.
here, hey, here's what the listing agent told me they were willing to offer. But she said it was negotiable. She mentioned 2. As you know, our agreement says 2.5. Let's just write it up for 2.5 and see how they respond. Yeah. Go
Okay.
ahead, KB.
Thanks.
No, that was pretty much what I was going to say is, you're obviously going to want to let the buyer know what they're offering and then bring it to their attention if there's a gap between what your buyer contract says and what they're offering, and let them know that there's an option, right? They can pay the difference or we can request the difference. And if it's a situation where, maybe your buyer's contract's for 3, you ask them for 3 and they come back and say, no, we're not going to give you 3, but we'll give you 2.5, then it's up to you whether you're like, yeah, I'm going to accept the 2.5 because that's not what your contract says. But also we want to make sure that we're doing what's in the best interest of the client. So I don't think that anyone isn't going to lower what they're getting to a reasonable amount. That's just my thought.
No, it's
Well,
just
since-
funny that the real estate agent, the seller's agent, said, "Oh, if you want more, just ask." It was
Yeah.
just,
Yeah, I think
I don't
that's an agent that's not representing her client the right way. I wouldn't even have said anything. I would have just said, yes, bring us your offer.
thank you.
You might have some old school sellers. They've sold a bunch of houses. This is what I'm offering. Tell people this is what I'm offering. Don't ask for more. Okay. Like, if that's what your seller wants to do, right? That's what your seller wants to do. So you got to do what your seller wants you to do. Right? So if you get a seller that's directing you to say, we're offering 2%, don't ask us for any more, that's what you got to do. Right? I don't think that's in a seller's best interest, but if that's what they're telling you to do, that's what you guys got to do. How about some more experience shares? Anybody have any other scenarios that have come up over the past couple of days that just we haven't maybe talked about here? That'd be a good share for the group. I'll tell you about one scenario we're trying to just get clarification on from legal is the scenario, and this happens quite a bit. I've got a buyer, maybe it's the parent That's the buyer, the actual buyer, but the kids are going to look at properties for them. Right. So what do? Do we need a separate buyer agreement with the parent and one with the kids? Can we do one with our thought process is we do one with the parent and in additional comments say, hey, acting on my behalf will be these two individuals. They may go look at properties, you know, something to that effect. So we're kind of waiting on legal to clarify. Go ahead, Lauren.
So I did email this back to MAR Legal last night, and I just checked again right now, and I do have a response that says, kind of as we said yesterday, put it in the additional provisions that somebody will be viewing properties on their behalf.
So one buyer's agreement necessary.
One buyer's agreement necessary with the party that you're transacting with.
Okay. And in the additional comments, hey, these people might view properties on my behalf.
Correct.
Okay, great. I feel pretty comfortable. I mean, that's just mass. I feel pretty comfortable that should hold across the board, right? We're going to MAR Legal. They're referring back to the settlement, and the settlement is what all the attorneys should be using in each state. So I think we're good there across all states. Anybody else have another scenario that you're questioning? Amber.
I just have a quick question about what you were just saying. If they wrote in the contract for somebody else to view these properties on their behalf, and then they go ahead and write an offer that someone has viewed on their behalf, would we still be signing the like that they haven't seen it?
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Sight unseen addendum, yes.
Unseen addendum. Thank you. It was slipping my mind. It's like unseen addendum because technically they didn't see it, even though it's in the contract that someone is seeing on their behalf.
100%, because the buyer didn't see it. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and just for those of you who don't know what she's even talking about, right? If you've got an out-of-state buyer that's asking you to do virtual tours, or somebody's looking at stuff on their behalf and they've never physically been in that property to look at it themselves, we really should have them sign a sight unseen addendum that just says, hey, look, I understand I haven't been in the property. I'm still okay moving forward. Doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. All right, what other scenarios have come up? How about just some conversations with buyers? Is there anything, you know, are people using the text templates? Or is any buyers giving you pushback? What's just some general feedback? And what I'm hearing is business as usual, just extra conversations and an extra document that we got to get signed, but we're not getting too much pushback from the buyers. So, you know, if you are getting the pushback scenarios, you know, we had Sue talk about one where we had a buyer that just didn't want to commit to having to pay a commission just yet. You know, let's bring those situations up and let's discuss them and let's see if there's different verbiage or there's different ways that we can educate the buyer on why these are necessary. Anybody having any, you know, weird things going on with the new forms or any questions about that stuff? Feeling comfortable with the forms? Okay. All right, guys, we are up against the 9 o'clock hour here. Great shares today. You know, lots of stuff around getting the proper disposal on stuff. You know, always, as I'm a huge fan of AI when it comes to this stuff. You know, just hey, I'm looking to get rid of some paint cans. What are my options? I'm looking to get rid of some oil. What are my options? Right? Use AI, either ChatGPT or Perplexity. I'm a big fan of these two apps to just at least get your mind going. Right? It might not be the right answer, or it might not be all the options, but I think it's a great place to start whenever you're up against something that you just don't know the answer to. So, I appreciate you guys. We will be back at it tomorrow morning at 8:30. Have yourselves a great Wednesday. Take
Thanks,
care.
Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Have a
Thank
great day,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Good one all.
Thanks,
guys.
Steve.